Welcome to the Autonomic Homeostasis Activation Podcast. I'm Tom Powles.
And I'm Ruth Lawrenson. We'll be unpacking what it looks like to activate your brain to holistically manage stress and trauma to facilitate homeostasis.
Being free to experience wellness in body, mind, and spirit.
Thank you for joining us. Let's get this conversation started. So, Tom, we're here this morning and there is a little special event going on because it's your birthday.
It was...
Well, not quite today, but a couple of days ago.
Yep, a couple of days ago. Yep, and I got just a little space and time left in my 60s. But as far as I'm concerned and feeling, it's just the 50s again. I feel so good.
Yeah, it feels great. And it's a great topic to be talking about because we're going to be talking about self-actualization. So first, happy birthday.
Thank you.
From me and all of our listeners, we really wish you the best year ahead. And, you know, I just want to say as well, thank you for doing this podcast with me. It's been such a joy to do it with you, but also what you give to so many of our listeners. And it is just the wisdom that you've gathered over the years, the way you've discovered autonomic homeostasis activation has impacted so many people. And yeah, I think there's a lot of celebration out there for your life and your work. So happy birthday. But today we're kind of like in this season, this special season, which is the fundamentals of wellness. That's kind of what we've been talking about. But within that, we've been talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Most recently, yes.
And just to kind of recap a little bit for our listeners, with Maslow's, you know, most people know Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we start with, you know, the physical needs. And the idea is that, you know, we need to have our needs met in this kind of slight order to be able to move up the triangle. And last time we talked about how it isn't quite like a formulaic thing of like, you get one level done and then you
it isn't a pyramid.
No, it isn't that. It's more of swinging.
It's more like going up and down in an elevator.
Absolutely.
But this is the building you are occupying, and the building you're occupying as an organism is your body, which has a mind and a spirit.
Yes. And we're talking about this in the context of wellness, you know.
Absolutely.
You're a wellness coach. I'm a coach and I'm with women and leaders. And so we're often interacting with people who are seeking wellness. And this is really the crux of what we're talking about.
And wellness is homeostasis.
Yes.
Yep.
And if you haven't heard, if you just tuned in today,
You're like, what?
go back because we've got loads and loads and loads of episodes on homeostasis.
Including with J. Scott Turner.
Yeah.
And homeostasis. And arguably, for me, leading international authority on the idea of homeostasis in our day.
Yeah, it's amazing. We've got some special episodes with Scott Turner and you, Tom, as well. You spent a lot of time of your time researching homeostasis, and autonomic homeostasis activation it's a somatic activation that you've discovered that helps the human body activate homeostasis, and you see incredible results with people coming, you know, out of the fight and flight spaces. I mean, this is definitely going to be a rabbit trail. I think this is going to be a rabbit trail episode.
Stay on the trail, not the descend into the rabbit warren. But yes, wellness is homeostasis. And what homeostasis is, that stable, steady state of body, mind, and spirit that operates within a range. I expand it beyond simply the biology, because when you get into neurology, the brain and the connection with interoception and the sensory awareness of the body, and it's combining those things so that in body, mind, and spirit, there can be homeostasis, that stable, steady state of optimal function, or at least survival within a dynamic range that fluctuates. There isn't an ideal like this is always your core body temperature. No, there's a range, and there is a dynamic disequilibrium that we exist in as an organism. Things affect us, and it can, but there's a range that it can operate in. When it gets too far out of that range, the brain itself, as we are discovering, because I'm all about the practical applications of this, not just the theoretical, but the practical application of how can this benefit us, and inviting the brain to do it. And then people with Crohn's disease, they don't even have, or ulcerative colitis. The biological markers are not even there for the conditions, because the brain itself does that. Not us doing something to the brain and body, the brain itself doing to itself and the body the restorative homeostatic activity. And so how that connects with wellness and Maslow's hierarchy of needs is that if there are needs physiologically, for instance, that are not being met, that disrupts homeostasis. If, for example, hunger and food are fundamental needs, and they are, shelter, for example, and there's no food, that has implications for things like safety. And that has implications for esteem and love and belonging and these higher levels. But they're not higher levels. They are just ways that we get to experience a fuller experience of homeostasis in body, mind, and spirit.
That's awesome. I love
So
that.
that conceptualization, not as a pyramid, which is somebody came up with that after Maslow talked about these things. It's a dynamic moving among them. And it's not as though you have to have all these physiological needs met, and then you can experience safety.
Yeah. That'll never happen. It doesn't happen.
No, that's not being alive and existing as an organism.
So we're talking about wellness. I think that word wellness we love because it is homeostasis. And and what we've both been in part of with AHA for a number of years now, and you like discovering that way of working with people, is that homeostasis is so important to engage with homeostasis. And like you say, there's this space of surviving and thriving, and when we can engage with homeostasis in a way that there's an optimization of homeostasis, we move from just surviving to this thriving space, and so wellness is that, right? Like that's what people, I think deep down, people who would say I'm pursuing wellness in my life would want to be thriving. That's in body, mind, spirit, like you said. Now with Maslow's, we know it's not, it is a pyramid in the way that Maslow described it, but like you said, it doesn't quite work like that. And you've already mentioned how we've had these episodes that we've gone through in the past few months. We talked about physical, we talked about the safety. We talked about love and belonging. In the last episode, we talked about esteem. And now we're on this kind of the last bit, really, of Maslow's, at least, which is self-actualization. So, Tom, talk to us about self-actualization and kind of where it's even come from, because we know that that it wasn't even reading Maslow, right? Maslow popularized it. So talk about that. Start us off.
I'm going to have to hold myself back on this one, because now remember, there was the physiological need, and then there was safety, and we've talked about that in a prior podcast, and then there was love and belonging. Love and belonging. And then esteem. In Maslow's conceptualization, it was self-esteem, but I begged to differ a bit, because I don't think there is self-esteem without esteem for others.
Yeah.
I can esteem myself in isolation and not esteem others. How inherent is esteeming self connected with being esteemed by others?
Mm. Yeah, it doesn't work.
It can't exist.
Mm-hmm.
So this idea of self, which has gotten a totally bad rep, is just self in isolation. Self is not a bad thing. Self is just self.
Mm-hmm.
In isolation and not inherently connected to other organisms, how and why would I esteem myself if I'm not experiencing love and belonging?
Mm-hmm.
So then there's esteem. And then the next aspect, more fuller expression of homeostasis is in Maslow's parlance, self-actualization. And a few things about that really important, I think, and very significant, is that, again, not self-actualization, like I can experience, and okay, so many thoughts going through, that self-actualization is usually understood as the process by which an individual reaches his or her full potential.
Yeah.
Okay. Usually understood as the process by which an individual reaches his or her full potential. Self-actualization. But again, is there self, whether esteem or actualization, which isn't inherently connected with other organisms?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No.
Like an organism can thrive, let alone survive, in complete isolation?
No.
There isn't such a thing. Not in reality. Maybe theoretically and a creation of the mind, but not in the reality of existing.
Mm-hmm.
You may not even survive for very long if you were in complete isolation.
Yeah.
An organism can't and doesn't exist that way. And so I would just talk about, like I did with esteem, not self-esteem, but understanding esteem as inherently including self and others in connection with each other, because that's homeostasis.
Mm-hmm.
A termite mound doesn't have a single termite. If you have a single termite, you don't have a mound, and an aardvark is going to come along and eat it, and then it's done.
And that's just a reference to what we talked about with Scott.
With Scott,
For
yes.
anyone who's like, what is Tom talking about?
What? Thank you. Go ahead.
Well, I just think it's Scott's research.
It was his beginning.
Yeah,
and understanding
he spent many
homeostasis.
years researching termite mounds, and that's where he drew a lot of his understanding on the homeostasis and organizational homeostasis and extended homeostasis and all sorts of fascinating things. Anyway.
Yep. So the origin of self-actualization as a term, like Walter Cannon coined the term homeostasis, Abraham Maslow did not coin the term self-actualization.
Mm-hmm.
He just became the most associated with it, especially in the Western world.
Mm-hmm.
He popularized it, absolutely, and it became very much associated with self-actualization, Abraham Maslow. But he didn't come up with the term. The term was actually from a German neurologist who coined the term self-actualization and inspired Maslow's understanding of that. So that was Kurt Goldstein. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That German neurologist who tied the concept of self-actualization to an expression of, here it is, homeostasis.
Fascinating.
It's always about homeostasis, and self-actualization was tied in Goldstein's understanding of the neurobiology of human beings as organisms to not just surviving, but thriving. And that's how I talk about and conceptualize self-actualization. Actualization again, not just self-actualization, but the individual organism does experience actualization as not just thriving or not just surviving, but thriving. I think of self-actualization, which is a we, again, my me, we. Actualization is the thriving experience of homeostasis.
With a me, we. And again,
Yes.
this is something that we talked about in prior episodes of there's always a me, we. There's,
Yes.
and I've jokingly said to Tom, we should get t-shirts made with the hashtag me, we. But, there is a me and there is always a we. And if you don't get homeostasis, you don't get the full thriving without the connection.
Yeah.
And so we always encourage people, listeners, to think in those terms, me, we. So it is self-actualization in a me, we sense. So how am I, me, in a place of self-actualization, thriving?
Yes.
And then, but at the same time, how that is connected to others, to what I'm connected to.
Yes, because as an organism does not exist and cannot thrive, let alone survive in isolation.
And even just take the human body. One of the things that Scott Turner talks about which we love, is many little lives.
Yep.
And so he talks about that in a human sense of our human organism we're made up of many little lives. We've got our organs and we've got cells, and you probably know more than I.
Let me interject this here. There are bacteria living throughout our bodies, and particularly in the gut. And the ratio of the numbers of organisms, and think of cell as inherently connected to an organism, the human cell to these the number of organisms that live within us is 10-1 in favor of the other organisms. There are 10 times as many other organisms living within us as we have cells in our own bodies. We're a hotel.
We really are a hotel.
It's like, a bed and breakfast or whatever the terminology is. We host 10 times as many little lives as exist in our own cellular biology.
And I was going to, Tom, just use that as an example because it is mind-blowing, that idea of we don't perceive ourselves as that most of the time. We perceive ourselves as just one, right? But actually in the human body, if everything, those kind of thousands and thousands of many little lives, whether that's bacteria or cells or organs or nervous systems or whatever it is,
what makes us up and what makes us us?
If all of those things are healthy, apart from one, we are not healthy.
Right.
So that's when we fall into literally physical illness. It's like everything might be okay, apart from your heart might not be okay. You wouldn't call yourself well then. You would say, oh, something's wrong. We need to get that balance. And that's a picture for us because it's like, actually, if we think about ourselves as individuals in a world that's, again, many little lives, the birds in the air, the grass on the ground, the other people, the other nations, we are part of many little lives outside of ourselves. If we think that as long as I'm okay, as long as I'm self-actualized, then the whole thing will be okay. It's just like having, your whole human body feeling like, well, everything else is okay apart from my liver. That doesn't work, does it? And so I think it's a really helpful picture because, it's easy to see with biology, but I think we lose touch with it, with the culture that we live in, but it's the same thing. Like, we cannot be well if another organism that we are connected to is unwell.
And collectively, even if one part is quote unquote well of a society, if there are other parts of the society that are not well, the society as a whole is not well.
And so we can kind of think that we're well, but we're not. And so I think that's I mean, what we're doing is giving a little lesson on the importance of we. Like, we are interconnected. We're interconnected. We are a host of an incredible interconnected ecosystem, which is the human body. And then we are also part of a massive ecosystem around us. And the idea of separating ourselves off, it's just, I mean, you can think it. There's no one stopping you thinking it, but it doesn't mean it's true. It's just really not true.
Is even functional. And eventually that catches up with you and everything comes apart. So back to self-actualization, as I would express self-actualization, is the experience not necessarily simply of the full potential that I have as an organism, but it's thriving as an organism, which inherently involves experiencing the potential that I have as an organism and what thriving actually is and looks like. So with Kurt Goldstein, he wrote a book in 1939, and remember that Cannon wrote the book The Wisdom of the Body in 1932, and in 1939 Kurt Goldstein, this German neurologist, picks up on, this homeostasis thing. That answers a whole bunch of stuff that I've been struggling with as a neurologist. And in his book, The Organism, a holistic approach to biology derived from the pathological data in man. So here's all the pathological data. Homeostasis, that's the pathologies addressed. And so he talks about, Goldstein talks about, for instance, visual disorders and aphasia and things like that. But the facts of the data presented go far toward a solution of the apparent contradictions between the facts of elementary nervous activity and those derived from the study of cerebral function by showing that functions of parts are dependent in large measure upon the total setting in which they occur. So Goldstein's interpretation was to see it from the homeostasis perspective. And that there isn't, even if parts are fine and thriving, if there are parts that are not thriving, then the organism is not self-actualized. It's not able to experience thriving because the whole is not thriving.
Yeah.
Parts can be thriving, but if there's part or parts that are not thriving from a holistic perspective, it is not in the thriving manifestation of homeostasis. That's how I would say what this is really all talking about. And so hence actualization, I can't experience. Why would I even want to try to experience the full potential of what it is to be me as an organism apart from thee? It isn't the way things are. But if I do approach actualization from a perspective of not just me, but we can thrive. And it's not just I thrive, good luck with that for you, but my thriving is tied inherently to your thriving, and your thriving is tied inherently to my thriving, and that's sustainable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because the approach to it is collective and as an organism.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think into this topic? I mean, we've really defined this in terms of it really does need to be the interconnectedness.
Yes.
And I wonder whether that's why so many people struggle to have that self-actualization, because, you know, there's so many things that, you know, perpetuate you know, and it's not like we're against individualism. There's an expression of that, but that we're living in a culture where it is screw you, you know, like it's fine.
Very much.
So I'm just curious, Tom, like what is stopping self-actualization apart from that? You know, what else is in the mix there that's a struggle for us in terms of, and I wonder, as you're describing parts, like what was going through my brain is not only the parts of the interconnected community that we live in, whether that is nature or you know,
or
our neighborhood or
yes,
families
yes.
or whatever. So we know that there needs to be a self-actualization that's connected there, and there are parts, and so we can't just believe that we're one part and nothing else matters. But what about even in our own life, there are parts?
Yes.
Right. So there's a kind of, you know, there are parts of us, and again, I guess it's like, well, if we're only thriving in one area, but there's like this other kind of, we sweep the other parts under the rug, so to speak, you know, I guess that would be stopping some level of true self-actualization as well. Like, what else is there in the mix that's the challenge here, I guess?
So this is where it's very helpful to lean into Maslow's conceptualization, because there are basic physiological needs,
Mm-hmm.
but not just my own,
Mm-hmm.
yours too.
Yeah.
And love your neighbor as yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's why that's inherent in all religions. It's a fundamental human thing to experience or to not experience it. And at some point, the lack of holistic well-being for all
Mm-hmm.
means that individuals within it cannot be well. And so to approach it is to approach it from the perspective of the recognition that I, as an organism, exist inherently in connection and relationship to others. So I will pursue my own wellness
Mm-hmm.
in collaboration and in connection with other people's wellness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then together we thrive.
So what stops that? Like, what comes against that?
It's when we have unaddressed needs in our own lives,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
that impacts the wellness.
Mm-hmm.
The autonomic nervous system, hence autonomic homeostasis activation, but the autonomic nervous system, traditionally understood as comprised of three parts or functions: sympathetic, parasympathetic, and enteric. Oh, and by the way, there's the extended autonomic, which includes the immune response. But the traditional conceptualization of three, I think, should just be expanded to there's four.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you think about it from the perspective of not just surviving, but thriving, can there be thriving even where the sympathetic flight or fight, which is important, we sense or perceive a threat to well-being, and then we deal with it,
Mm-hmm.
not by avoiding it or managing it, but by addressing it. Because avoid is stress and anxiety, manage is depression and anger. Good luck with approaching any sense or perceived threat with any one or all of those and having it resolved. I'm just going to get all stressed out about it. I'm going to get all anxious about it. I'm going to get all angry about it, or I'm going to get all depressed about it. Where's the solution in any of those? There isn't. But it's inherent in us to sense or perceive a threat to well-being. And dealing with it then is a process of the parasympathetic, which is rest. How important is rest? How many people rest? Relax. How important is relax? It's parasympathetic. It's homeostatic. How many people relax? Recover. Do we allow for recovery? And digest. But how much are those things connected to the enteric nervous system, the part of the brain in the gut, which is survive and thrive? And how much are those things connected to the immune system? How many of the medical and mental health disorders are connected to the immune system? Remember, 10-to-1 ratio of other things living in me than I have cells in my own body. If I don't deal with them, they will deal with me. And ultimately, then I may not just not survive. I mean, not thrive. I may not even survive. And then the absence of homeostasis is called dead. But we can do that, but just don't try to do it alone.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because it can't work.
Mm-hmm. And so with what, under the kind of umbrella of wellness, I'm sure some of our listeners are listening to this because, they're wanting to be well. They're wanting to pursue wellness.
Absolutely.
What would as we close up, what would your advice be for self-actualization in that space?
Pursue wellness by working at and dealing with the physiological needs, the needs for safety, the needs for love and belonging, the needs for esteem, significance, worth, because those are all inherently connected to thriving. But then lean into thriving. What encourages and promotes me experiencing the fullness of the potential that I have as an organism? You can't do that in isolation. So adopt the me-we perspective in pursuing the fullness of your potential. So do those things that support the fullest potential you have as an organism who exists amongst all the organisms. That is your body, your mind, your spirit, and that's a me-we. It's collective. Don't try to do it in isolation because that's not a solution.
And I think as well, would you agree with this, Tom? Also, I think sometimes people can think, well, I'll figure myself out first so that then I can help others or be with, but it's all happening at the same time. So the me-we is completely connected in terms of the same levels, the same time. So I think the idea of separating them, think of it as a deeply interconnected space. Whatever is happening with you is impacting what's happening with others. Whatever is happening with others is impacting what is happening with you. And as you pursue wellness, with these kind of things that we've talked about from Maslow's hierarchy of needs, as you pursue this thriving, this optimized homeostasis, everything's happening at the same time in an interconnected way. And if we can approach it that way, I think we do have a chance to really thrive together.
Yes. And to neglect one of those is to pull out a pivotal piece of thriving.
It's like the Jenga block. That's what I'm seeing.
Very much.
You don't want to pull too many Jenga blocks. It will crash.
Yeah.
So
that'd be a cool Jenga kind of a game. It could be built with all sorts of little blocks that have all sorts of different aspects like food and shelter and
I told you it's a rabbit trail episode.
There it is. Anyway, my point is that as we consider Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that there was one other that usually isn't even incorporated because it didn't get into the pyramid that somebody created because Maslow considered it at the end, so it doesn't show up in the pyramid. But that was transcendence. And that's where we can talk about in our next episode to finish this out, is that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, usually thought of as the 5, is actually 6. And it was transcendence. He just thought of that after the pyramid got created. So it didn't make it into his own pyramid, but it's not a pyramid anyway.
It
transcended transcendence. Yes, exactly. It transcended that. And transcendence is where we get to it, truly holistic. It isn't just body and mind, but now we're into the realm of the spirit.
Well, I can't wait for that conversation, Tom. And thank you for listening, listeners, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Autonomic Homeostasis Activation podcast. Join us next time as we continue in our conversations with Tom.
If you're interested in pursuing your own wellness journey, please check out our website, autonomichealing.org.
You can also reach out to Tom at innerworkings.org.